Okay, we should be live now.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the May 12th, 2020 public hearing of the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission. I will call the roll. Chair Carroll.
Here.
Commissioner Bland.
Here.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Here.
Commissioner Chapin.
Here.
Commissioner Chen.
Yeah.
Commissioner Devonshire. Commissioner Devonshire. Sorry, we just unmuted you. Can you say here?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum. Commissioner Gustafson.
Here.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Here.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Here.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Here.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the May 12th public hearing and public meeting. And I'm delighted this morning that in addition to the applications we'll be reviewing, we'll be also holding a hearing on a proposed historic district, the Manida Street Historic District in the Bronx. And so we'll be starting with that item. This hearing is being held via Zoom and will be simultaneously live streamed on our YouTube channel. The public can only view the meeting via the YouTube live stream. So any member of the public who wishes to testify should follow along on live stream. And then when the item you're interested in testifying on is being presented, you can enter the meeting through Zoom or by calling in, and we'll display that information at the appropriate time when we begin each item and when we begin the testimony for that item. Just want to remind everyone that there is a slight lag time, so allow a couple of seconds before you speak. And for the public, when you do speak, if you could turn the volume of YouTube down or to mute, that will help us to hear it without any feedback. And these meetings are being transcribed, so please speak clearly and state your name at the beginning of your remarks. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kate Lemos-McHale, our Director of Research.
Good morning. Item 1 this morning on the research agenda is LP 2644, the proposed Manida Street Historic District in the Bronx. It has boundaries as described in the agenda and in the following presentation. And I'd like to recognize the hard work of the staff to bring this proposal forward today and to welcome Jessica Baldwin from the team to make the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Jessica Baldwin from the Research Department, presenting our proposal for the Manida Street Historic District in the Hunts Point neighborhood of the Bronx. The proposed district consists of 42 semi-detached brick houses executed in a modest Renaissance Revival style with rounded projecting bays and classically inspired trim. Designed by architects James F. Meehan and Daub and Kreinborg, and built between 1908 and 1909, the block is an intact example of the early 20th century development that occurred in the neighborhood in response to transportation improvements and rapid industrialization. Located between Lafayette and Garrison Avenue, the proposed historic Manida Street Historic District boundary is shown here in red and incorporates houses on both sides of the street. The proposed historic district is located in Hunts Point, shown here, which contains a mix of industrial, commercial, institutional, and residential uses. Other designated New York City landmarks in the vicinity include the American Banknote Company printing plant directly west and the Peter S. Hoe House, known as Sunny Slope, 2 blocks east. For much of its history, Hunts Point was in a rural area known as West Farms, depicted on this 1887 Robinson map, with the future location of Manida Street outlined in red. Grand estates dotted the landscape like the LPC designated Sunny Slope shown on the bottom left, and the no longer extant home of Walter Chisholm, shown on the top left. Originally part of Westchester County, West Farms was annexed to New York City in 1874, bringing a number of infrastructure improvements to the area, including transportation. The expansion of the subway into the Bronx from Manhattan initiated the area's shift from a rural community to an industrial hub in the first decades of the 20th century. The West Side IRT subway line, indicated by the blue dotted line on the historic map, reached the Bronx in 1904. The blue dot marks the location of the Intervale Avenue subway station, which was completed in 1910 and is acknowledged as a major impetus for development in Hunts Point. Easy access to the waterfront and railroad made Hunts Point an ideal location for industrial growth. Large manufacturing buildings, such as the one on the left, began to replace many of the old country estates. Manida Street was cut through the Fox and Fale family estates in 1897, as shown on this 1904 map on the left. Construction started on Manida Street in the fall of 1908 and was completed by the spring of 1909. James F. Meehan developed both sides of the street and served as architect for the houses on the west side. He hired the architectural firm of Daub and Kreinborg to design the houses on the east side. The 1911 map on the right illustrates Manida Street as one of the earliest developments in the area, along with a row of tenements directly to the east that remain extant, though heavily altered. Construction on this block of Manida Street occurred in anticipation of the area's industrial development, which was expected to attract skilled and well-paid employees. And the 1909 advertisement on the left for these houses describes the area as one of the prettiest and most accessible parts of the Bronx. Developers envisioned Hunts Point as a mixed-use neighborhood, and construction of both residential and industrial buildings continued steadily during the first decades of the 20th century. The 1912 newspaper clipping shown here on the right included a photograph of Manida Street as evidence of the rapid development of the Hunts Point section of the Bronx. Shown here in circa 1909, Manida Street's residential enclave was primarily home to Russian, German, and Hungarian immigrants that mostly spoke Yiddish and worked as policemen and insurance clerks, while a few worked at nearby button and box factories. The block remained occupied by Russian, Hungarian, and German immigrants until the mid-1940s. Around this time, a Hispanic community was established in the area and remains there today. The 1912 article describing the development of Manida Street also discussed the industrial development in the vicinity and included an image of the American Banknote Company printing plant, a New York City landmark constructed in 1911, located directly west of the proposed historic district. The building type is illustrative of the area surrounding Manida Street, which consists of mostly residential buildings and larger scale apartment houses, as you can see in this aerial image, with the proposed district outlined in red. The buildings shown here at the north and south ends of Manida Street, just outside the district, further emphasize this contrast. They include, clockwise from top right, a large-scale apartment building, new construction post office, a converted industrial building, and a former garage that is now the headquarters of the Point Community Redevelopment Corporation. Manida Street stands out from its residential and commercial surroundings due to its residential character its industrial and commercial surroundings due to its residential character in combination with its historical and aesthetic consistency, all of which give it a strong sense of place. One developer and two architects were responsible for the construction of the buildings between 1908 and 1909. In addition, Manida Street's strong stylistic consistency distinguishes the proposed district as a discrete enclave within Hunts Point. Executed in a modest Renaissance Revival style, the two-story and basement semi-detached buildings feature mirror image facades with rounded projecting bays, low stone stoops, simple cornices with steeply pitched parapets above and ornamentation concentrated around the doors and windows. Ornamental variation differentiates the east and west sides of the street. The east side of Manida Street contains a consistent row of semi-detached houses with restrained brick facades, bowed window bays, belt courses ornamenting the fenestration, and projecting door hoods supported by scrolled brackets atop the entrances. The buildings on the west side of the street are more embellished and show greater variety. Flemish Revival style parapets project above the bays of several buildings. Lintel and door surrounds featured varied classical motifs, and original stained glass transoms are retained in some of the windows. Since both sides of the block feature buildings with the same height, form, and style, Manida Street is visually cohesive and has a special historic character within Hunts Point. In our analysis of integrity, the research staff noted 3 general types of alterations: facade material replacements, roofline simplifications, and the addition of areaway fences. As shown on this map, the majority of houses are intact or have minor alterations. Of the 42 houses, 13 are moderately altered and 3 have heavier alterations. Overall, the house's unified style, height, and form with their intact rhythm of bays and decorative detail contribute to the strong sense of place and good integrity of the block. Commissioners, the next few slides illustrate the 4 levels of integrity shown on this map. Intact buildings, or those with minor alterations, retain their historic form as well as their decorative details, including cornices and window and door surrounds. Alterations are primarily limited to window and door replacements, modifications to the stoop and areaways, or removal of some ornamentation along the roof line, such as a historic balustrade. Moderately altered buildings retain their historic form and ornamentation, but have experienced changes to the roof line or facade material. In most cases where the facade material has been replaced, the historic decorative features such as window surrounds and band courses have been retained. Buildings considered heavily altered have been resurfaced in non-historic materials and have also lost trim details or major roofline features, such as the Flemish Revival parapet. Number 853 and the attached number 857 shown here circa 1940 and in 2020 have lost their parapets and are 2 of the 3 heavily altered buildings on the block. Today, even with alterations, Manida Street retains its historic character and remains intact overall. Looking very much as it did in this 1923 photograph, the proposed historic district stands out in the neighborhood as a complete block of early 20th century residential architecture that is consistent in terms of style and type, and that has been preserved on both sides of the street.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Most of the properties along the west side of Manida Street include rear garages and outbuildings that are accessible from Barretto Street. These buildings were later additions and are not visible from Manida Street. The research staff considers these non-contributing to the historic character of the district. The mid-20th century brought drastic economic and infrastructure changes that had devastating impacts on the South Bronx. Hunts Point saw a rise in crime and the neighborhood experienced severe disinvestment, causing some longtime residents to leave. But many of Manida Street's residents remained and took special care to see that their homes continued to look much as they did more than a century ago. Today, Manida Street continues to have a strong sense of place and historic character, distinct from its more industrial and commercial surroundings. It remains a remarkable example of early 20th century construction boom that occurred in the South Bronx as a result of expanded transportation routes and industry in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Jessica at this time? Let me see. Please raise your hands if you do.
And we can note for the record that Commissioner Goldblum has joined the proceedings.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm going to start with Commissioner Gustafson, followed by Commissioner Devonshire. Go ahead, Commissioner Gustafson.
Good morning. This weekend, I spent a couple of hours wandering around Manida Street, and a couple of things were striking. But the question I have is on the garages. I don't think I spotted a single garage that had any kind of historical value. And I know you said that they're later additions, et cetera. I just think we should be clear to the district in terms of how we'll treat those buildings. Have we a policy on what if you could explain the policy on what we'll do with those later additions that are not particularly valuable?
I can respond to that, Commissioner. As Jessica mentioned, those we would consider to be non-contributing to the historic character of the district. They're not visible from Manida Street, and they are all later additions. And so for those, there would be, a simpler and more flexible level of review.
So if somebody wanted to, for example, I mean, some of them are somewhat ramshackle, and if somebody wanted to tear one down, we're not throwing our bodies in front of that train, are we?
We are not, yeah.
That's right. So it would still require coming to the commission with a proposal for demolition and its replacement if it's to be replaced. But the commission would not would understand that we identified them as non-contributing and would therefore not have an objection to the demolition and would largely be reviewing the replacement.
Thank you.
Any Commissioner Devonshire?
The historic images show 9/1 sash within the windows. Are there any of those original windows extant?
I don't believe any are. Most have been replaced with 1/1s at this point.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any questions. I think we're going to turn to public testimony, and I'll hand it over to our Executive Director, Lisa Savage.
Great, thanks. First person we're going to bring in is Councilmember Salamanca. Councilmember, we've brought you into our room. Councilmember Salamanca?
Yes. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Hello.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Let me try this here. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair Carroll and the LPC commissioners and members of the public. I am Councilmember Rafael Salamanca from the 17th Council District in the South Bronx. I join you today to pledge my support for the proposed historic designation of the Manida Street Historic District. The 800 block section of Manida dates back more than 100 years to early 1900s, when the Hunts Point neighborhood was experiencing tremendous development and population and growth. As the neighborhood evolved from a largely rural area to one that saw increased modes of transportation and a boom in manufacturing, people flocked to the Bronx to take advantage of the new opportunities. A century later, Manida Street has maintained a strong neighborhood context and connection to the historical nature of when the area was first developed. Recognizing the need to preserve the history of the neighborhood as the community continues to evolve, the Manida Street homeowners band together to push for historic landmarking. More than a decade after the advocacy began, my office was able to facilitate a study of the area for designation in August of 2018. In a city that is ever-changing, Manida Street serves as a link to the rich history of the South Bronx. On behalf of my community, I respectfully request that the LPC approve this historic district application. Lastly, I really want to thank the community advocates who pushed for this designation. I think Maria Torres, She's one of the leaders in the Manida Street Homeowner Association. She will be speaking soon. And I really want to thank the LPC staff and Chair Carol for their thorough study of the neighborhood and for working with the homeowners throughout the designation of this process. And, I really want to thank LPC. When I brought this to Commissioner Carroll's attention, immediately I got the attention that I needed. They came out to my community, I believe it was 2 times, to speak to the homeowners. They did a thorough study, and I'm happy that we are in this process to make this a reality. So thank you again, commissioners.
Thank you, council member.
Great, thank you, council member.
Okay.
Okay, next person I'm going to bring in is the Point CDC, which I believe is Maria Torres. The Point CDC, can you hear me? The Point CDC, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Could you please turn off the YouTube volume if you haven't already done that?
Oh, sorry.
The Point CDC, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me? Yes.
I will do that. 1 second.
Yes, we can. Could you please turn off the YouTube volume if you haven't already done that?
Sorry.
The Point CDC, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me? Yes.
I will do that. 1 second.
Yes, we can. Could you please turn off the YouTube volume if you haven't already done that?
I'm sorry, I have to go back.
Okay. So I think that was Maria. We'll bring her back. Let's do okay, I'm going to admit Simeon Bankoff, Historic Districts Council. Simeon, can you hear me? Simeon Bankoff, HDC. Here you are.
Lisa.
Hi, Simeon. Can you state your name for the record? And you have 3 minutes.
Of course. Simeon Bankoff, Executive Director of the Historic Districts Council. The Historic Districts Council is the citywide advocate for New York's historic buildings and neighborhoods. As may be deduced by our name, HDC institutionally is a strong proponent for the designation of historic districts. We are especially pleased to be supporting the designation of the proposed Manida Street Historic District, which is remarkable for a number of reasons, notwithstanding the meritorious nature of this architectural assemblage. With this designation, the Landmarks Preservation Commission will be creating the 150th historic district, including extensions, in New York City. Using the same criteria, only 13 years ago, almost to the day, LPC designated the 100th historic district, Manhattan Avenue. By that accounting, this shows remarkable progress in pursuing the Commission's mission to protect and preserve our city's remarkable architectural and cultural history, especially if one considers that the LPC designated the 50th historic district in 1985, 22 years before. Mathematically, this means the Landmarks Commission has accelerated the pace of historic district designations, achieving an equal number of designations in only 60% of the time. At that rate, we could be looking forward to the 200th historic district being designated in 2028, which is an ambitious and very worthwhile goal. This is also the first historic district designation being deliberated upon remotely outside of the LPC's offices, or at least the first one in a very long time. Not only does deliberating on a potential designation at this time reinforce the importance of LPC's function to New York City, it also suggests that in the future, the Commission might be able to hold hearings closer to the areas being considered. That would be a good way to engage residents and local stakeholders in the Landmarks Commission's public process. And much as we look forward to standing in the same room as the commissioners to deliver testimony, this proves the hearing doesn't need to take place in the municipal building. Finally, the proposed historic district is the 13th in the Bronx. New York's northernmost borough has long been underserved by many municipal resources, including landmark designations. HDC is pleased that the Commission is taking steps to remedy this, and we strongly encourage more efforts in that direction. Over the past few years, through our ongoing 6 to Celebrate program, we have been encouraging and helping to organize neighborhood-based community efforts throughout the borough, from Woodlawn in the north to Hunts Point in the south. This year, we helped bring together community activists to form the Bronx Borough Landmarks Preservation Committee to better educate the public about the remarkable history and resources of the Bronx and advocate for their preservation. We are pleased to be working with the committee to identify a number of sites for the Landmarks Commission's consideration and look forward to submitting that list soon. My colleague Kelly Carroll will take care of the rest.
Thank you, Simeon. Okay, we're going to admit the Point and Maria Torres again. Maria, can you hear me? Maria Torres again. Oh. Maria, can you hear me?
I hear you again, but
Maria Torres again.
I think the computer's not letting me go back to go shut down my
Maria, can you hear me?
YouTube.
Okay, Maria, well, I think what I'm going to do is move you out again, and maybe you could just turn YouTube off entirely, and then I'll bring you back. Okay, Maria, well, I think what I'm going to do is move you out again, and maybe. Okay. So next person we're going to bring in is Daniel Karatzis. Daniel Karatzis, can you hear me? Daniel Karatzis. Daniel Karatzis, here you are. Please turn off your YouTube volume and state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, your video is stopped. Your microphone is unmuted. Okay, hi. Yeah, I guess you can't see me. I guess that's not a loss. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and you can begin.
Sure. My name is Daniel Karatzis, and I'm representing myself. For the last 30 years, my efforts in the field of historic preservation have been focused solely on Jackson Heights, where I live. However, it was Manida Street that my mother left behind when she married in 1954 and headed south to Jackson Heights. From the mid-1940s to the early 1960s, my mother's family lived at 848 Manida Street. The roughly 20 years on Manida Street helped form many strong and fond memories for my mother, as well as her mother, brother, and sister. In March of 2010, a New York Times story on the possible landmarking of Manida Street profiled some homeowners, including the Hercules family, to whom my grandmother sold number 848 in 1963. Just a few months earlier, I had stumbled upon my grandmother's old address book when cleaning out my mother's apartment after her death. The name Hercules stood out not just because we are of Greek descent, but because of their address, 848 Manida Street. I dug through my mother's old photos, of which there were many, and sent along some old photos of the house to the Hercules family. Why did Manida Street loom so large in my mother's memories? I think the architecture on the block certainly played a crucial role. You can find semi-attached two-family houses all across New York City. However, the charm and scale of these houses helped form many strong friendships that have lasted decades. My aunt is still in touch with her childhood friend who lived at 846 Manida Street. And while the demographics of the block have continued to change over the last 110 years, the architecture's scale and charm has continued to work its magic, as is obvious in today's hearing. I remember going back to visit in the mid-1970s during one of New York City's worst decades. And while Hunts Point Avenue, just one block away, showed the ravages of disinvestment and economic decline, Manida Street looked not much different than when my grandmother left a dozen years earlier. We need more blocks like Manida Street. This one block has been tested in good times and bad, and should be preserved for future generations. I therefore request that you landmark Manida Street forthwith. I know that my mother and her parents and siblings would certainly agree. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Daniel. Next, I'm going to call Majora Carter. Majora Carter, I've brought you in. Okay, Majora Carter, can you hear me?
I can, but I didn't plan on testifying, but I'm just happy that this is happening. So I'm delighted to hear it.
Okay, Majora Carter.
That's
can
my
you hear
testimony.
me? Okay, great, thank you.
But I didn't plan on testifying.
Okay, we're gonna try, let's see, we'll do Kelly Carroll, HDC. Kelly Carroll. Okay, Kelly, you should be ready.
Good morning, Kelly Carroll for Historic Districts Council. Earlier this year, the first meeting of the Bronx Committee was held in the offices of the Point at the foot of this proposed historic district. Manida Street has been a standout block in this part of the Bronx for over 100 years. Developed in anticipation of rapid transit to the city center, these handsome houses were home to generations of New Yorkers looking to settle down and build a community. In researching this proposal, we've heard many tales of multiple generations of families growing up on Manida Street. It seems that despite the vicissitudes of the area over the course of the 20th century, Manida Street has always had a strong community attraction, starting with its inception and continuing on through the arrival of young professionals, artists, and families 30 years ago, when New York was just beginning to recover from the economic upheavals of the 1980s. The solid architectural bones of the street, its handsome urban ensemble, and the decades of house-proud stewardship continue to communicate its intrinsic worth to new generations of Bronxites. It's a classic New York story, and this is a classic New York block. The Historic Districts Council salutes the community for all of its work in keeping places like this block alive and vital. And thanks to the Landmarks Preservation Commission for recognizing the community's commitment and supporting their efforts. We look forward to continuing to celebrate and protect more of the Bronx's remarkable history and places. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Okay, next I'm going to call Samuel Brooks. Okay, Samuel Brooks, brought you in. Great, Samuel Brooks, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes, and if you could please make sure your YouTube volume is off and state your name for the record. You have 3
Yes,
minutes.
I think everything is off. My name is Samuel Brooks, and I'm the president of the Mott Haven Historic Districts Association. In addition to that, I am the co-chair of the Brownsboro Landmarks Committee. In essence, what I simply wanted to say that I'm pleased and I'm excited that we finally went from number 12 to number 13. Our first designated block was back in 1969. And fortunate, I wouldn't use the word unfortunate, we are moving in the right direction. As everyone already knows, the Bronx was primarily abandoned for decades. Now that developers have turned their attention to our borough, we need to rapidly move and continue to identify amazing districts that we need to protect. And again, I am pleased that it took about 10 years for Manida to finally get to where it is. And I am excited. Number 13 is my favorite number, but we need to go beyond Manida once we get approval and really start looking at other amazing areas within the Bronx. And that was a primary reason we created the Bronx Borough Landmarks Committee. And we are on a rapid pace. We've identified several other districts that should be considered, and we're working with the Historic District Council and members of the entire borough to try to get these to calendar as soon as possible. Again, congratulations to Manida. I am extremely excited and looking forward for rapid approval.
Great, thank you very much, Samuel.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna try the point again, Maria Torres.
Hello.
Hi, Maria.
Okay, I think I have it together now. I'm sorry.
Great. If you could just state your name for the record, and then we have 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Maria Torres, and I am calling as the current owner of 870 Manida Street. I have lived on this block for approximately 25 years, and I'm very excited. And I want to thank Chair Carroll and the rest of the commissioners of the Historic Landmark Preservation Commission for moving so quickly with this proposal for Manida Street. This all started pretty much, there's always been talk about this block and how different it always was from the rest of Hunts Point. And so people have discussed getting it to be a historic district, but it wasn't until more recently that the homeowners and residents got together to put something more substantial together to see this through, especially with all the changes that are happening within the Bronx. To preserve a block like this was very important to many of the people on the block. I have submitted written testimony, but I also, for myself and a couple of other folks from the block have also done so. But I did just want to speak because I understand that your commission looks at things in terms of its architecture or the historical value of things that may have happened or people who may have lived here. But I also just wanted to kind of discuss just briefly the fact that Manida Street still remains intact, especially through the burning of the Bronx in the 70s and the drug epidemics of the 80s, that many of these residents who are still living here today fought for their homes, kept them, preserved them, still live here, and are proud to live here, and really are kind of part of the building blocks of Hunts Point in that sense. These are homeowners that never left, that still continue to this day and are very proud and want to preserve their block as it is. The fear is if this does not happen, since many of the homeowners are seniors, things will change very quickly, and this block will not remain the same for very long, unfortunately, since it is zoned to go R6. And so we were just really very thankful and excited that this commission is taking this on and taking it so seriously, that it's moving forward, even with all the craziness that's happening in this world today. And we really thank you for all of your time and the research that has gone into it. And I would love to get a PDF of what was presented earlier by your commission in terms of their research. Was great to hear. And I just want to thank you for the time, and I'm sorry for all the craziness before. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, next I'm going to call Renzo Pereira. Renzo Pereira. Can you hear me, Renzo? Renzo, can you hear me? Renzo Pereira, can you hear me? Okay, we're gonna put Renzo back in the waiting room. We could try again. Next, I'm going to admit somebody who is named Owner. We've brought somebody with a device named Owner in. Owner, can you hear me? Okay, we're gonna put this person back in the waiting room as well. Oh. Sorry, Owner had just accepted.
Hello?
Owner, hi. Are you here to testify on Manida Street?
Yes, I am.
Great. If you could state your name for the record, and then you have 3 minutes.
Sure, thank you. Hi, my name is Dondi McKellar, and I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. And my address is 856 East 167th Street, Bronx, New York, 10459. And I have lived here since 2013. I'm in support of Manida Street becoming a historical district. I'm also a member of the alumni of Preservation Historical District Council School for 2019. During my tenure as liaison for the Bronx Community Board 2 with the Historical District Council, I selected 23 sites for 6 to celebrate in 2019. While exploring my community, I uncovered Manida Street. At first glance, I knew this block was different. The homes were well maintained, a quiet block with rich cultural heritage, history of families who live to embrace another generation. This is a treasure to have and behold in the Hunts Point Longwood community. My hope is status is to be granted, affording homeowners of Manida Street to thrive in a forever changing wind of evolution of gentrification that looms. Thank you for your time and your consideration. Sincerely, Dondi McKellar.
Great, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Yeah, you too. Okay, the next person we're going to admit has a device named Samsung. So somebody with a device named Samsung, SMN5OU. Can you hear me? Okay, Samsung, can you hear me? Okay, Samsung. Okay, I see that I've unmuted you. Are you here to testify on Manida Street?
I am. I'm Lynn Funk, architect.
Great. You have 3 minutes. Thank you. You can just, if you could turn your volume of your YouTube off.
And
then you just state your name. Okay, great. And then you have 3 minutes.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you and hear you.
I can't see you, so, okay, yes, I'm Lynn Funk, architect from the Victorian Society, New York. I'm writing for the Preservation Committee, enthusiastically supporting Manida Street, Hunts Point in the Bronx, being formally designated as a historic district. It's the most auspicious occasion being the 150th designation, which has been mentioned, and also the 13th for the Bronx, and the first remote LPC designation here, at least that we know of. I wanted to say that the houses built between 1908 and 09 in Renaissance Revival style by Dobbin Krabenborg and James F. Meehan of 2 stories are consistent architectural style and retain many details and historic details. And they were built during the period of rapid construction development of the South Bronx that hastened the construction of the Westboro Inner Borough Rapid Transit subway, speared that into the Bronx 5 years later. So the designation of this district would meet The purpose and declaration of public policy defined 55 years ago in the landmarks law, and in particular would protect and safeguard the city's historic, architectural, aesthetic, economic, political, and cultural heritage embodied in the ensemble of buildings that form this district. Manida Street is the textbook example of a concerted effort by owners to consistently maintain the integrity of their houses, as mentioned, and therefore ensuring a formal discipline of compliance. 10 years of lobbying and advocating for the district has now borne fruit, and this is a wonderful spirited achievement, bears testimony to what can be done to ensure preservation and recognition. We commend the LPC for their decision and look forward to considering and supporting other districts, including those in the Bronx that merit such status. And this is testimony which was also submitted in writing by the Victorian Society, New York. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lynn.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Okay, next I will be admitting Roy R. Roy R., I've brought you into our room. Roy R. Okay, Roy R., I brought you in. Can you hear me?
Society, New York. Thank you.
Roy, could you please turn off your YouTube volume?
Hi.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you please state your name for the record, and then you have 3 minutes to testify.
Yes, my name is Roy Rebiev. I am the owner of 821 Manida Street and part owner of 819 Manida Street. And I appreciate everyone coming out today, that we can have this in the unprecedented time of what we're going through in the entire, New York and just in the world in general. For the record, I do want to state that I am against the Landmark Commission approving this entire ordeal. I spoke with a few members in the community on Manida Street itself, and not everyone is for this. I do want to point out something that I've not heard anyone yet discussing. I am the youngest person on Manida Street that owns a property, and I think I represent the up and coming generation. From what I've heard to date is everyone that had history in the past and that they want to try to conserve whatever was there because of the homeowners that currently live on the block. But nobody's taken into consideration what this might do to the future generations and how it might affect future generations, whether it's going to be an obstacle for someone to buy something in the future or to do anything for whatever they would want to have in the event that an owner, let's say on 850 or 840 Manida, just as a hypothetical example, would want to sell, how it might affect, what might be in the future, or if there might be anything as far as trying to gain insurance and what type of obstacles they might face because the landmark would be placed on their property. And I think that not enough thought has gone into what would be for tomorrow. I understand that everyone is, speaking about where they are in their current circumstance and that there is an old generation. But that's one thing that I just wanted to point out. And from my previous conversation with Maria Torres and a few other individuals on the block, this whole ordeal is just that they want to have a few individuals in the neighborhood or a few on the block per se. For Manida, there is a fear of gentrification. And that's my conversations in the past 18 months. That's my understanding, that this whole thing is specifically more geared towards that, not so much the economical and the architectural and everything else that the landmark stands for per se. So that's how I feel, and that's the the brief due diligence that I've done and that I may share with the Landmark Preservation Commission.
Thank you, Roy. And we would be happy, the staff at LPC, to continue having conversations with you offline, but we do really appreciate your comments.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next I'm bringing in somebody on the phone, 1202. Okay, 1202, I've brought you in. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi, are you here to testify on Manida Street?
Yes.
Okay, great. Could you state your name for the record, and then you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Carroll and Commissioners. I'm Andrea Goldwyn, speaking on behalf of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. The Conservancy is pleased to join elected officials, neighbors, and advocates to support designation of the Manida Street Historic District. This handsome block of row houses well represents the architecture and history of the Bronx at the turn of the century. It dates to 1908-09, when transportation improvements were transforming the character of this section of the borough from rural and suburban to a dense urban community. The 42 semi-detached houses are notable for intact Renaissance Revival style facades with brick bow fronts and robust classical details. Some feature distinctive Flemish parapets. A 2010 New York Times article suggests that these features would have been familiar to the large numbers of German-American Bronx residents of the day. The houses maintain their historic form, scale, materials, and decorative details. As a small residential oasis in largely industrial Hunts Point, this cohesive ensemble creates a strong sense of place and community that merits designation. The Conservancy is happy to offer building owners assistance from our Technical Services and Historic Properties Fund programs. Thank you for the opportunity to express the Conservancy's views.
Great, thank you very much, Andrea. Okay, and then the last person, I'm going to try Renzo Pereira one more time. Renzo Pereira? Oh, here we go.
Hey.
Renzo Pereira, I've unmuted you.
Yes,
Can you
hi,
hear me?
how are you? Yes, can you hear me?
Great, good. Can you state your name for the record? And you have 3 minutes.
Okay, so my name is Renzo Pereira. Me and my partner moved to the Bronx about 4 years ago. And we're excited to be part of this meeting because we think it's important to keep that part of history in our neighborhood, especially in the Bronx. I mean, New York City is known for there's so much known for its history. So being part of pushing this, I think it's really preserving the essence of history. I think without history, especially in any type of situation, without history we had nothing. And yeah, I mean we love this neighborhood, and I think it's very unique, and that's why we would like to push this for our neighborhood.
Great, thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay, with that, that is everybody that has signed up and was in the waiting room to speak.
Okay, thank you. Rich, do we have written testimony that was submitted?
Yes, we do have 9 letters in support, some from neighbors and some from other organizations.
Okay, thank you. And those letters have been distributed and shared with all of the commissioners. Okay, so now I'm going to see if we have questions, and Commissioner Gustafson has his hand up. So I'm going to start with you, Commissioner Gustafson.
Yeah, I know we heard testimony from one homeowner in opposition, and I was wondering if we have a preview on the what the numerator and the denominator are in terms of supporters and opponents. What percentage of the homeowners are on board, and what does that look like?
Okay, well, we've done, as the council member said, a couple of outreach meetings in the neighborhood. And we, at those meetings, did get, I think, probably a majority of homeowners who attended, who expressed support. We have received letters today in support in addition to the testimony. I don't know that we have an actual mathematical calculation, though. So I'm going to turn it over to Kate, who may be able to let you know more.
I would just concur, we don't have an actual count, but from our conversations, we do have a strong sense of support. We heard today some opposition, but in the majority of our conversations, we've heard support.
I believe that's the first piece of testimony or written statement in opposition. Otherwise, it has been supportive.
Yeah, and as you know, we spend a lot of time working with property owners as we move through a designation process, even before we move through it, and then as we move through it, to make sure that everybody understands the benefits and the responsibilities of being designated. And so had we heard more concerns or expressed opposition in those meetings, we certainly would have been working on that. So we will certainly reach out to the person we heard from today and continue to work with the neighborhood to see if there are any other concerns or questions about what designation might mean. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. Great. So not seeing any other questions, I think we'll make a motion to close the hearing today, and we will schedule a vote next month on this item. So we'll reconvene then. The research department will consider the testimony, and we'll have a presentation at a public meeting in June, and we'll schedule the vote at that time. So Commissioner Gustafson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Devonshire, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. We will, of course, continue to work with property owners and accept any other comments that property owners have until we schedule the vote. Thanks. Okay, so we'll move to the preservation agenda now.
Hey, good morning, everybody. We're going to start today's Preservation Department public hearing agenda with item number 1. This is LPC 20-08392, an application for a certificate of appropriateness number of Brooklyn, block 451, lot 7, 349 Hoyt Street in the Carroll Gardens Historic District, a neo-Greek style apartment house designed by J.G. Miller and built in 1884. The application is to construct a rooftop bulkhead and railings.
And commissioners, we're just letting the applicant into the hearing. And the applicant can state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Oh, sorry, my name is Kevin Kaler with Eric Soffian Architects, and this is a rooftop bulkhead addition and guard railing to the existing 3-story building or 4-story building in the Carroll Gardens Historic District. Don't seem to have. Oh, okay. I have the control now. So building is located, whoops. This is the historic, so the building is located on the corner, one building in from the corner of Hoyt and Carroll Street, and Carroll Street has this kind of offset condition. The existing historic photo showing the buildings, the 2 existing buildings have always been 1 story taller. And then, whoops, going the wrong way. Whoops, keep going the wrong way. So this is existing condition showing the adjacent buildings. The corner building on the lot of our building is this one here. You can point out that there's like existing visible enlargements located on Carroll Street here and here. The roofscape is kind of varied in different conditions as well. Oops. Having a slight delay on the slides. Whoops.
Yeah, there is a slight delay, so if you could just click on the slide and then pause.
Okay.
Otherwise, it may advance too quickly. Thank you.
So this is this existing condition of the building. We've been working with staff to do other restoration work to bring back the charm of the existing historic condition. That work would include replacing windows, restoring the front door, and removing a non-historic ironwork and bars, and kind of repainting the existing ironwork. This is the existing rear of the building, which has an existing fire escape, and this one is just replacing the windows with staff at staff level. Oops. So the existing area, whoops, going too quick. So the existing area around the block shows a variation of different heights with the different existing enlargements and a proposed enlargement that's under construction right now. See on Carroll Street 293, 305 has this visible enlargement with visible railing. 270 was approved last year with rooftop addition similar with bulkhead railing, and then shows different other projects within district. Oops. So this is visibility of the proposed bulkhead from directly across the street. And then this is additional visibilities from further down the street because of the location of the block and the building on the block and like its elevation relative to hills in the area. Going further down Carroll Street, it does become more visible after like 100 and over 100 feet past the building. So and you can see it up to like past 300 feet within this corridor here from number 3 to 5 on the numbers. So these are a series of visibility studies from the block going down Carroll Street from side to side and down Hoyt Street as well. So zoom in on the ones that are sort of the most visible from directly down Carroll Street and kind of like a front on view. You can see, but once you start getting in view to closer to like 100 feet in front of the building, the bulkhead becomes not visible at all. It's only a small bit of the railing. And then from the side view, the railing is visible, and from down south on Hoyt Street, and then north on Hoyt Street, the bulkhead has a slight bit of visibility over the adjacent building. This is just kind of show the mock-up of the bulkhead and the railings on the roof for reference. Proposed front elevation showing the bulkhead and the guard railing. The guard railing and the bulkhead were designed with like the intent of trying to minimize them as much as possible. The bulkhead is a standing seam siding, light in color. to try to like have it disappear or like not as be a juxtapositioned against the sky and background as much as possible. And then the guard railing was designed with cable railing with separation of the top rail from the bottom rail to kind of create a more airy kind of feel to it. And it's painted a light gray color so that it also kind of blends in and kind of is not like juxtapositioned against the sky as much as possible. And then you can kind of see the proposed rear elevation as well. Like the bulkhead is just a small bit on this far side here, and you can see the railings going with the slope. Here's the side elevation proposed as well. And then this is the existing and proposed plans, and this bulkhead is an extension of the existing stair for public access to the roof. So its position is really we can't really do anything about that because it needs to continue up with the stair. So, and then these are kind of proposed like renderings of what it would look like. You can see that like the railing is almost like very hard to see in these. So, and these are from the north and south of Hoyt Street. That's the presentation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Kaler at this time? All right, not seeing any questions. Let's see if there is anyone here to speak on the item from the public. Lisa, do we have any public testimony?
Nobody signed up to speak, and there's nobody in the waiting room.
Okay, thank you. And Rich, have we received a resolution from the community board or other written testimony?
Yes, we received a resolution from Brooklyn Community Board 6 recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, any final questions before we close the hearing? Okay, is there anything, Mr. Kaler, you'd like to say before we close our hearing and move into our discussion?
No, I think no.
Okay, great. So why don't we go ahead and close the hearing? And Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, and all in favor of closing the hearing, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, any opposed? Okay, so our hearing is now closed. So let's move into a discussion. And this is a building, as the architect represented, that's in a somewhat varied streetscape. It's taller, so not part of a uniform roof line. And the proposal is for a bulkhead, which would be clad in standing seam, a neutral gray finish standing seam zinc, and a cable railing, wire railing set back from the facades. And so, and the applicant also showed other visible rooftop accretions in the neighborhood, given the varied roof lines and topography. So why don't we go ahead and start? And I'll start one side of the table. Commissioner Goldblum.
It looks fine to me. I think that the railing is set back and the bulkhead is low and has a neutral finish of a material that is durable and appropriate to historic districts. So I see nothing at all negative to say, shockingly.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin.
I'm in general in support of it. I agree that the visibility of the addition is not very prominent. Is there an issue that the railing is visible from the front facade from any direction?
So the railing
there is.
Go ahead, Corey.
Sorry, if you don't mind, I'll take that one. Commissioner, the railing is visible due to the intersection with a street nearly in front of the house. So as you get further away, you do start to see the front railing a bit over the projecting bay, so the cornice and its projecting bay. But again, most of these views are, from some distance and or views.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, at a considerable distance. I think this is appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Halford Smith.
I agree with the
comments so far. The only suggestion I might make, if people find it objectionable to see that railing over the front facade, is that they could perhaps push it back a little further to reduce that visibility. Otherwise, I think it's appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Shamir Baron.
I think it's appropriate the way it is.
Okay, Commissioner Gustafson.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Holford Smith. I'm okay with it, but I would like them to work with staff to see how far back they can move that railing from the front of the building.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson.
I think moving the railing back would be a good idea, but I think it's appropriate after that.
Okay, all right, Commissioner Lutfi.
I agree. I think it's appropriate, but I would recommend working with staff to move the railing back.
Okay, and Commissioner Bland.
I'm in the rail back.
Okay. And Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Okay, and Commissioner Devonshire.
Push it back, way back.
Okay. All right, great. So I think we have a consensus to vote to approve with the modification of setting the railing back. So Commissioner Holford Smith, would you read that motion?
Or pull it up here. In the matter of LPC 20-08392, 349 Hoyt Street in the Carroll Gardens Historic District, a neo-Gothic style apartment house designed by J.G. Miller and built in 1884. The application is to construct a rooftop bulkhead and railing. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Carroll Gardens Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate any significant architectural features, that the bulkhead and railings will be set back from the front facade and will not be visible from directly across the street, and the bulkhead will not be visible from First Street or over the rear facade. That while the bulkhead, which is aligned with an existing stair, will be visible over the side of the building north on Hoyt Street and over the front facade west on Carroll Street, it will be clad with a neutral light gray standing seam zinc cladding, in keeping with the materials traditionally found on rooftop accretions. That the rooftop bulkhead will align with the location of an existing staircase that is being extended to serve the roof and therefore cannot be relocated to a less visible portion of the roof. That the railing, which will be visible over the side and rear facades, will feature metal rail tops with a thin profile and vertical cables, all with a matte light gray finish, and therefore from certain views call undue attention to itself. And that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the historic district. However, I find that the proposed railings will be clearly visible over the cornice from several vantage points west along Carroll Street. Therefore, I recommend that the railing be set back from the front facade to align with the existing chimney, working with staff to minimize its visibility over the cornice.
Commissioner Gustafson, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes. Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Baron.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 11 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So continue to work with the staff on that modification, and we'll move to the next item.
Chair, we are waiting for the applicant to join, so I'm not sure if you wanted to take a quick break, but now might be the time to do it.
Okay, so why don't we all take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and hopefully the applicant will be here by then. And commissioners, just remember to turn your video camera off, and then when you return, turn it back on so we'll know you're here.
And your microphones, please.
Corey, has the applicant joined us?
Yes, we are ready when you are.
Okay, let's give it. Oh, we've actually been gone 10 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
All right, we have 7 now. Let's go ahead.
All right, the next item is number 2, LPC 20-07323, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 1242, Lot 53, 1003 Sterling Place in the Crown Heights North Historic District. A Renaissance Revival style row house designed by Axel S. Hedman and built circa 1899. The application is to construct a porch.
And the applicant has joined the hearing. And you may begin. Please state your name for the record.
This is Yadek Fresco. Can you hear me?
Yes, if you could just state your name for the record and you may begin.
Yadek Fresco. I'm an architect for 1003 Sterling Place. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you. Just go ahead.
Okay, great. I don't know if I don't have presentations. My screen doesn't display them. So this is a modest alteration to here they are, to a three-story, two-family house. It is in a historic district. The proposal is to make a porch extension on a rear yard. So the entire block is a historic block, and I'm trying to get control over the screen. All the buildings in the block do have existing extensions. They've been there from the time the block has been designated as a historic district. So they are pretty much original to the structures. Half of the extension 1 story, half of the extensions in the block are 2 stories. The building we are doing work on has 1 story extension. So we're proposing to add onto it within a historic context to the existing structure there. And we're adding a screened porch. It's a 3-season structure. It's not winterized. It's basically to add a comfort for the owners to enjoy the outdoors in a mosquito season. So the screen porch is going to be, the major concern was that existing building on the back has a bay window, and that bay window has original stained glass windows. Owner and us, we love that that touch details, and we're actually preserving it. The stained glass has been already restored on the interior. And we'll continue to restore it on the exterior during our renovation. The entrance to the real porch would be where the small window is next to it. So the bay windows, the bay window and stained glass are not touched in any way.
Can I just interrupt for 1 minute? I think maybe Edith, could you advance the slides? I think for me anyway, I think the applicant's internet is maybe not strong enough because it's breaking up. So I'm listening a lot, but the slides don't seem to be following the presentation.
Sure,
Yeah, I don't have
applicant had advanced to the end of the presentation, so I'll just bring it back to to the slide.
Okay,
And
thank
then, sir,
you.
if you can just tell me to advance, I can move them to accommodate.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. On this is the first page. Can we go back to the first one? You will see on the sample map that right here at the bottom, all the buildings do have extensions. Our building is, you could see it on the enlarged detailed side map. It's a third building on a row of the building at the bottom. That's the that extension would be only the porch would be built on top of the existing extension. We can move to slide number 2. You could see on plan 3 the rooftop over the existing extension. If we move to the next slide, you would see the floor plan of the porch and the entrance to the porch. The plan number 3, the last plan on this page, shows the doorway with the steps onto the roof of existing porch, of existing structure. It's an exterior space. We actually restoring the roof, and the planks on top of it would be would allow for the rainwater to go and be drained out. The bay windows and the stained glass stay intact. We could move to the next slide. This is existing elevations, which show you detail number 4 on the left bottom corner. It shows the existing elevation and the existing bay window with the stained glass. And then detail 5 and 6 show side elevations. And the next slide would show the proposed. So back to detail at the left bottom corner, you see a bay window and our proposed screen porch. They marry to each other. We carry on the cornice top of it. And we also continue the details, horizontal details. We carry it from the bay window onto the screen, the insect screen on the doors and windows opening on the screen porch. You can see the same thing on detail 5 side elevation. The next slide would be just enlarged elevations for better visibility over the internet. And I think the last slide would be a photo. And
All right.
I think that should conclude our presentation.
Okay. Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? Please raise your hand. I just have one question. How is the porch structure attaching to the bay, or does it primarily attach to the building and minimally attached to the bay, or how is it supported?
So the wall against the property line has to be a fire rated wall. So we continue with the brick wall against our neighbor. That's the requirement of the code. And we have a structure columns between the insect screen panels. So the roof of the porch marries into the existing bay window cornice. The structure is permanent, is bolted to the brick facade, and it rests on the columns.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions at this time? Not seeing questions or hands raised. We'll move to public testimony. Lisa?
Sure. Kelly Carroll is from HCC, is the one person that signed up and is in the waiting room. Kelly, I've brought you in. Great, I see you. You
Great.
can state your name for the record
Kelly
and you have
Carroll.
3 minutes.
Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. Historic bay windows are a characteristic and significant feature of the rears of this block of Sterling Place. The proposed porch realistically is an extension which adheres itself to the bay, obscuring an attractive architectural feature. While well executed, this may serve as a bad precedent for the next intervention of this rear facade, and it merits serious deliberation from the commission if this is a facade design that should be encouraged. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kelly. And that's everybody.
Okay, thank you. Rich, do we have a resolution from the community board or other written testimony?
Yes, we received a resolution from Brooklyn Community Board 8 recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. All right. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, and I just want to ask the applicant if they want to respond to the comments that were made before we close our hearing.
We agree that bay window is a beautiful feature, and that's why we try to marry the cornice from the bay window, and we were not trying to end, although it would be more appropriate for us to enter the screen porch to one of the windows on the bay. We owner and I feel very strongly about preserving the stained glass window, which will be visible because the insect screens are open. We feel we're preserving it as much as we can.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if not seeing any final questions, we'll go ahead and make a motion to close the hearing, and we'll begin our discussion. So Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, and all right, and all in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So the hearing is closed, so we're going to begin our discussion. This is, as was presented, the construction of a porch above an existing extension that intersects with the bay, not visible from any public thoroughfare, and has made some efforts to preserve the significant features. So why don't we start, and I'll flip to the other side and start with Commissioner Devonshire.
Unmuted?
Yes, you're unmuted.
I think this is appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Chen.
I agree.
Okay, Commissioner Bland. Great.
Yeah, it strikes a very pleasant note with me. I'm a big fan of screen porches. So if Kelly Carroll is still listening and wants to engage with that conversation, if this should be a precedent, even in this row, I'm prepared to say it should be, but only if it's done as well as this is done. I mean, this is a very sensitively and very carefully designed screen porch. So I think it's very good and appropriate. And the retention, of course, of the stained glass within the bay, even though it will now be within the screen porch, is laudable.
Okay, great. Commissioner Lutfi.
I agree. I think the applicant has done a good job of doing something that's thoughtful. They're interested in preservation, and it's not visible.
Okay, and Commissioner Jefferson.
I'm in agreement with my fellow commissioners.
Okay, great. Commissioner Gustafson.
Agreed.
Commissioner Shamir Baron.
I agree. The porch is very compatible with the Oriole window, and I think it's very well done.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
I agree.
Commissioner Chapin.
I agree.
And Commissioner Goldblum.
Agreed.
Okay, great. So we have a consensus to approve. So Commissioner Devonshire, would you read that motion?
Sure. In the matter of 1003 Sterling Place in the Crown Heights Northern Historic District, an application to construct a porch, I recommend approval, finding that the work will not damage or eliminate any significant features of the building, that the work is reversible in nature and will not be visible from any public thoroughfare, that the historic stained glass windows in the oriel will be retained and the porch will only conceal one bay of the oriel, that the design of the porch will be compatible with the oriel window, and the work will not diminish the special architectural or historic character of the Crown Heights North Historic District.
And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
And Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes. Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson. Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 11 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to the next item.
The next item is number 3, LPC 20-04732. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Queens, block 8050, lot 35, 265 Park Lane in the Douglaston Historic District. Colonial Revival style house designed by Albert Humble and built in 1920. The application is to replace porch windows.
And commissioners, the applicant has joined the hearing. And please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Hi, my name is Frederick Tang of Frederick Tang Architecture, and I'm representing 265 Park Lane in Douglaston Historic District, and it's a window replacement. Sorry. This is the historic map. This is a plan of the house showing, oh, I'm sorry. This is a plan of the first floor of the house showing the east and the west porches. We are proposing to replace the windows on these two flanking porches. This is the 1940s tax photo showing the two screened porches as they existed in the 40s. And this is a photograph of the home today from a similar angle. You can see on the east side, the porch has jalousie windows. And on the west side, there are sliding windows with in the style of double hungs with storm windows on top. This is a view from the, sorry. This is a view from the northeast, showing the northeast corner of the jalousie windows. And this is a view of the front of the house where you can see the double hung style sliders and storm windows on the west side. These are existing condition photographs of the east side porch jalousie windows. And existing photos of the west side storm windows and sliders. These are interior photographs of the west side porch. We can see the detail of the sliders here. These are existing elevations. Again, east side jalousie. And then the proposed elevations with the double hungs. We're only proposing replacing this interior area. So existing sill, jambs, and headers are to remain, as are the columns of each on the porches. The east elevation. We're maintaining the transom window. And then the north side of the east porch. The west elevation, these are existing and proposed. Existing with the door with the side lights, we are replacing those side lights with 2 double hungs and maintaining the transom above. And then the north side of the west elevator, the west porch, the proposed. It's pretty straightforward.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay, so let's move to public testimony. Lisa, is there anyone in the waiting room to speak?
Nobody signed up to speak for this item. There are people in the waiting room. I'm trying to see if they're all applicants. Corey, maybe you have a sense of if these are all applicants in the waiting room for the next item?
Lisa, they are applicants. Those are all applicants in the waiting room.
Okay.
Okay. So no
Okay.
one. Okay, Rich, have we received a resolution from the community board?
Yes, we received a resolution from Queens Community Board 11 recommending approval, and additionally a letter in opposition from the Douglaston and Little Neck Historical Society.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Mr. Tang, did you meet with the Douglaston Little Neck Historical Society at all?
And I have not, and I didn't know that there was a letter in opposition.
Okay, all right. Commissioner, are there any final thoughts you want to add? Do you know, one question I think that could set this up is, do you know when the porches were originally enclosed?
We don't know, but we do have historical photos from the 50s that show the jalousie windows there and the double hung sliders on the west porch. So at least from then.
Okay, great. So, and there was a tradition of enclosing these side porches, so I'm not surprised it happened as early as that. Okay, any final questions for the applicant? Okay, let's make a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Holford Smith, would you make that motion?
So moved.
And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, and all in favor of closing the hearing, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll move to our discussion. Commissioner Chapin, would you like to begin this one?
Thank you, Chair Carroll. I feel that because these porch windows are not historic, that the replacement with new windows and doors is appropriate. And I think this, in general, the appearance of this will be very appropriate to the district. So I can support it.
Okay, Commissioner Holford Smith.
I agree. I think the replacement of the non-original window configuration is appropriate, and I think using a double hung window makes it even more so. So I find this appropriate.
All right, Commissioner Shamir Baran.
I'm in agreement, and I think especially with the configuration of sort of repeating the configuration on either side unifies the whole of it. So I think it's very appropriate.
Commissioner Gustafson.
I agree. Consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds like mine. So I like that.
And Commissioner Jefferson.
I agree.
Okay. And just in the interest of time, it seems like this is going in the direction of supporting it. Is there anyone who has an opposition to it or any feeling of against it or suggesting change? Okay, so I don't see any hands raised. I think we actually can make a motion to approve this. So Commissioner Chapin, would you make that motion?
Yes, thank you. In the matter hold on just a second. In the matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Queens, LPC 2004 732 265 Park Lane, Douglaston Historic District, a colonial revival style house designed by Albert Humble and built in 1920. Application is to replace porch windows. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Douglaston Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the existing porch windows are not historic or integral to the fenestration pattern of the house. Therefore, their replacement with new windows and doors with different configurations from the existing will not eliminate a significant architectural feature or compositional element of the house. That the proposed porch windows and doors will be consistent with porch infill historically added to porches in buildings of this type, style, and age, and will be harmonious with the design of this building in terms of level of transparency, materials, configuration, and details. That installing the same type and configuration of window on both porches will help unify the appearance of the house, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special historic and architectural character of the house or the historic district.
Thank you. Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you second that motion? Okay, Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes. Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Baran,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 11 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the next item now.
Next item is number 4. This is LPC 20-09059. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 822, Lot 7507, 160 Fifth Avenue in the Ladies Mile Historic District. A neo-Renaissance style office store and loft building designed by Robert Henderson Robertson and built in 1891 to 92. The application is to install new entrance infill and a marquee.
Commissioners, the applicant has joined the hearing. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Good morning, Chair Carroll, Commissioners, and LPC staff. Thank you for considering our application today. My name is Ewan Robertson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Simons Foundation, which is the applicant. Before I hand over to my colleagues for the main presentation, I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to the foundation in case you're not familiar with us. We are a private philanthropic foundation. We fund basic research in mathematics and computational science. So that includes astrophysics, quantum physics, computational biology, and so forth. We do that primarily by making grants to universities throughout the US and worldwide. We also have our own in-house research institute, the Flatiron Institute. That's based at 162 Fifth Avenue, so across the street from the building that's subject to this application. And we also do extensive communication and convening around the science that we do, so through events, lecture series, and other types of workshops. 160 Fifth Avenue is our headquarters. We own that building. And we're committed to being part of the neighborhood for a long time to come. We're a foundation that's established to exist in perpetuity is the intent. And as I said, an important part of our work is communicating the science that we do and the science that other people in our fields do. We do that through public lectures, invitation-only lectures for senior scientists, and we also host events in participation and partnership with other organizations, such as the World Science Festival, and so forth. We have an auditorium in our building and a number of other convening spaces that we use for that purpose. So that's a little bit about the foundation. I'm going to hand it off now to the rest of the project team, who will take you through the details of the application. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ewan. This is Cass Stackelberg from Higgins Quays Barth and Partners, and Alex Zelviero from TPG Architecture will join me in the presentation for this proposal. The proposal is limited to the construction of a canopy and entry infill down at the building's main entry on West 21st Street. And Alec, perhaps you can, with the cursor, just highlight that area. That's the area in the red box down the street. As Ewan said, 160 Fifth Avenue is the headquarters of the Simons Foundation. It's located on the southwest corner of Fifth Avenue and 21st Street, located in the Ladies Mile Historic District. And one of the challenges for the foundation is that the architecture of the building leads people to the Fifth Avenue entry, which was restored in 2010, and there's now a portico on the south side of that elevation. But that was historically the main entry, but now the main entry for the building is in the westernmost bay on West 21st Street. So there's a desire to have a bit more prominence for that entry with the introduction of a canopy. And as Ewan said, there's also a public component to the foundation's work, and there's an auditorium now. And so there's a desire both in terms of wayfinding, but also protection from the weather for introducing the canopy. As you'll see in our presentation, the Ladies Mile Historic District provides us with an appropriate historic feature that supports this intervention. As you'll see, there are numerous canopies throughout the buildings in the district, these large scale, particularly these large scale commercial buildings on Fifth Avenue and 6th Avenue. Next slide. A few historic photos of the building. Sorry, give us 1 second. On the left, a photograph taken soon after completion of the building, and then on the right from the late 1970s. On the left, you can see the building as it appeared. Historically, it was known as the Mohawk Building. It was the headquarters of the Van Ingen and Company, who were woolen importers. The building also had architecture offices on the upper floors. And like many of the buildings in the district, it was constructed at the end of the 19th century, completed in 1892 and designed by R.H. Robertson. You can see on the far left of that left photo, the original portico that served as the main entry point for the building. And then in the red box down in the far end, what was the building's service entry. The photo on the right from 1978 shows the building having lost the original portico on Fifth Avenue. Portions of its facade had also, or cornice had also been stripped off. And in the designation report from about 10 years later, the building obviously, or the entry obviously speaks to the building's history, and it describes the service entry on the far end of the west elevation, or north elevation, as a driveway. It really was just primarily a loading bay. Next slide. So a couple, now turning to the existing building, a couple images to share with you. On the left is an existing ground floor plan. Just a minute.
Apologies.
Great. On the left is an existing ground floor plan, and on the right is an existing West 21st Street elevation. And a couple things to point out in the plan. First off, the main building entry is more than 140 feet off of the Fifth Avenue facade. But I think the other important element here, and Alec will get into this in greater detail, is the size of the lobby itself. It's actually quite small relative to the scale of this large 9-story commercial building. And then on the right is the existing elevation, just illustrating the main entry on the west side that elevation. Next slide. Can we go to the next, Alex? Alec?
If it's easier, I can advance the slides. And I'll do that just for the sake of.
Sure. Why don't we do that, Alec, if that's all right for you? I think the lag is challenging. So, so slide 5, just a few photographs on the left looking west on 21st Street and on the right looking east. You can see there are canopies that extend off the storefronts for the ground floor retail tenant, and then the main building, excuse me, is beyond that. There's some pin-mounted or pin-mounted signage above the entry, but it's a bit difficult to make out from the corner at Fifth Avenue. Next slide. Next slide shows the pre-work conditions prior to the building entry being reestablished or being established on 21st Street. So these are views into what was the loading bay. And what you can see in this photo, there's a clear story set of windows above a roll down gate. And on the right side of that left photo, there's a little bit of ironwork, wrought ironwork in front of those windows. That's all the remaining historic fabric in this bay. There was a roll down gate and there was a cast iron pier that separated the truck entry from the pedestrian door and stairs. That cast iron column was actually retained and is integrated into the lobby, and obviously will be retained as part of this project. And then the photo on the right is a view looking across the sidewalk back toward Fifth Avenue, just showing the roll down gate and the open entry into the loading bay. Next slide. The next slide are the current conditions in the bay. So on the left is the entry into the building, and again, the clear story or transom windows and that delicate wrought ironwork that is historic, and that will remain. Everything below that, so from the frieze down, including the windows and the doors and the side lights, that is all infill from 2009. And that would be replaced as part of our proposal. And then the view on the right, again, looking across the sidewalk, similar to the previous slide, just showing the recessed entry pulled into the body of the building slightly at the pier line. Next slide. So in looking at the proposal for the canopy, one of the things that we wanted to share was the presence of canopies in the Ladies Mile Historic District. And what's interesting is, as a commercial district, many of these large-scale corner buildings, in particular on Fifth Avenue and Sixth Avenue, had main building entries on the avenue, and then at the far end on the side street were their loading bays. And so the photos on the top of the slide illustrate two conditions existing, 149 Fifth Avenue, which is diagonally across the street from 162 Fifth, and then 695 Sixth, which is over at 22nd. And both of these buildings had main entries on the avenue, and then loading bays and canopies on the side streets. Similarly, across the bottom, some historic views of no longer extant canopies, 880 Broadway on 19th Street. Similarly, main entry on Broadway with a loading bay and canopy at the far end of the side street elevation. And then the 18th Street property, which actually we believe predated the connection to the 6th Avenue elevation. This was for B. Altman and later Siegel Cooper. But again, just illustrating that canopies were a part of the district landscape. This is not obviously a market district like Gansevoort or perhaps even Tribeca, where there are real proliferation of canopies, but for these large scale commercial buildings, this is a feature that one sees in precisely the same location as where we are proposing for 165th Avenue. Next slide. So this next slide shows, again, across the top of the slide, two commission-approved canopies, relatively small, sort of isolated to the individual entry bay. And then across the bottom, this is at 162 Fifth Avenue. This is actually at the Flatiron Institute, directly across 21st Street from 165th. On the image on the left shows the original service bay and canopy. Again, large-scale commercial building with entry on 5th and a canopy over a service entry on the far end of the side street elevation. And under commission approval about 6 or 7 years ago, that historic canopy was removed, and then two separate canopies over the service entry and the main entry for the Institute was installed on the 21st Street side of the building. Next slide. Finally, we wanted to just understand the presence of revolving doors in the district. So as you'll see, part of the infill that we're proposing involves revolving doors at the main entry. There have been a series of commission-approved revolving doors for both main entries and ground floor retail and commercial entries on the right. This is a building on 23rd Street that historically had swing doors, and about 5 years ago, a revolving door was installed under commission approval at the main entry. And then the other two, so the center image, 695 6th Avenue, this has not yet been installed, but approved for the side entries, roughly where the canopy exists on that building. And then the image on the left, 126 Fifth Avenue, a revolving door set into a primary entry for just a typical ground floor storefront bay at this building. So like canopies, we do see the presence of revolving doors in the district, both for main entries as well as entries on the side streets. Next slide.
Hey, Cass, it's Alec. I'm back on the call.
Very good.
And so in summary, the proposed canopy design that is before you today it has several purposes. It would serve to for the general public and attendees to the foundation's programs, and announce their arrival at the auditorium. It would support that programmatically, and from a usability point of view, will show how it supports the usability of the lobby space and the functionality of the entry. It would provide signage which would allow the public to find the building lobby, particularly from the 5th Avenue approach, because as it currently exists, the signage is difficult to see from the avenue. We hope to show that it would have no impact to historic features and existing historic fabric in the building, but while at the same time promoting energy conservation and providing the public with a place of refuge from inclement weather. So next slide. So the canopy proposal before the commission today really needs to be seen in the context of modifications that are proposed to be made to the building lobby as a whole. As Cass has mentioned, the existing lobby is small relative to the size of the building itself, a 9-story building with over 100,000 square feet of office space. And so it is congested, and the plan on the left shows the existing condition of the lobby. As well, the existing entry doesn't have any, it doesn't have a vestibule and doesn't have revolvers, which allows for any mitigation of the winter air flowing into the lobby. And so it's uncomfortable both for the person at the desk and for anyone in the lobby during the winter. As soon as the doors open, the winter air comes rushing through the lobby. As well, it is when there is a program in the auditorium proper has an occupancy of 172 persons, and the second floor public assembly space as a whole has an occupancy of 218 persons. And so those over 218 persons are actually arriving for programs, you know, all at once, and are accessing the second floor through the interior stairwell, which is on the upper right-hand corner of the building lobby. And they're having to check in at the reception desk. So there's significant congestion going both in and out of the lobby. The proposal on the right solves for many of these issues by repositioning the reception desk and allowing for direct access through a turnstile to the stairwell, which gives you access to the second floor. The proposal at the entry and the canopy then allows for the revolver, which gives, which mitigates the effect of winter air, and allows for a canopy which provides weather protection for people coming in and out, gathering before programs and exiting and waiting for rides after programs, while retaining the amount of egress width that we have in the existing entry, because we have 2 doors worth of egress width, which we are replacing with like in the proposal. Next slide. To repeat this slide, just to reiterate, this is a photograph of the existing condition at the building entry. And the area within the red line is the area that is proposed to be affected by the new canopy and entry. This area does not include any historic fabric. The proposal seeks to retain the decorative features that were installed in the 2008-2009 modification to the entry. So the existing signage to the building is not affected, is not proposed to be affected, nor is the existing masonry facade. Next slide, please. And so the proposal, all the work in the proposal is within the dashed red line from the previous slide, and it proposes within that space to bring the new entry doors, the center revolver, and 2 side swing doors as the new entry, and to install the new canopy, or more properly marquee, which is projecting from the building, the legal 8-foot projection from the building line. And we are in this proposal seeking to retain the character, or to echo the character, of the 5 bays of the historic windows, historic clear story windows above the canopy. And so the side doors, the effect of the 2 side doors, and then the center revolver are a move towards respecting the symmetrical 5 bays of the upper portion of the entry. That symmetry of 5 bays is echoed in the coffer detail of the canopy proper, where the canopy is articulated with a coffer detail both on its underside and on both leading edge and both side edges, and further articulated with an edge detail and sort of minimal cornice detail on the leading edge of the canopy. The materials proposed are in keeping with the existing materials in the building entry, and primarily this would be either painted finish in antique bronze, or antique bronze metal finishes. Next slide, please. In building elevation, we have the, as it were, before and after, with the existing condition on the left-hand side and the proposed new entry and canopy on the right-hand side. And so we see how the existing entry has more than sufficient height to allow for generous doors. In fact, the existing entry, the doors are, if anything, over tall, and because they're actually too tall they're actually custom doors, difficult to open in a breeze. The proposed entry then sits into that 10'7" of height, And all the work occurs within that open bay. Next, please. And so a comparison view of the before condition on the left and the proposal on the right-hand side. The canopy, besides lending weather protection, would also be in keeping with one of the intents of the design proposal overall, which is to increase the amount of light and on the interior of the lobby, and to have a lit portion, to have the canopy actually light the sidewalk in front of the building doors. And so this also lends itself to a sense of arrival, a sense of safety, a sense, make it easier to find the building entry for symposiums and programs, particularly as people are egressing during the winter months. Next, please. So a detail section cut through the building, cut through the entry bay, showing the existing condition on the left and the proposed condition on the right. The design has the new canopy as being cantilevered out from the building line, and so we are we are not proposing to have cables, which was felt was a more industrial effect, as it were, because the proposed canopy hews more towards the more traditional design in keeping with the overall character of the facade. It projects a legal 8 foot from the building line and is 11 inches in depth, and that's a sufficient depth to allow for structural drainage and for LED lighting. Next, please. And so a detail of the upper left-hand side of the proposed articulation of the leading edge of the canopy with the edge detail and then the coffering detail on both the leading and side edges and the coffer detail on the underside of the canopy. The signage, proposed signage on the canopy, which would face, I'm sorry, yeah, that's all right. Next slide, please.
Okay, and then after the signage, we're near the conclusion of the presentation?
Yes. So the proposed signage on the canopy, which would be in the same font as the serif font of the existing signage. It would be unlit stainless steel pin-mounted letters to allow for visibility against the bronze. And there would be signage facing the 6th Avenue and 5th Avenue exposures. Next. And then these are simply showing the detailing which is proposed to be replicated, either salvaged or refabricated. The existing bead molding, which is not historic, but was a part of the 2008-2009 proposal, and which will be replicated into the new proposal. Next. Overall views, just showing the effect of the proposal in context of the street view. Next, please. And the view coming from the 6th Avenue, a view seen as approaching it on the corner from across the street. Next, please. And we can be done, actually.
Okay, great.
Very good.
All right. Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions right now? Okay, so not seeing any questions. Let's see if there's any public testimony. Lisa?
Yes, nobody signed up to speak and there's nobody in the waiting room.
Okay, thank you. And Rich, did we receive any written testimony on this item?
Yeah, we received a resolution from Manhattan Community Board of 5 recommending denial.
Okay, all right. So I'd like to just turn to the applicants to see if they can talk a little bit about the community board presentation and respond to that. Yeah.
Sure. So we presented to Community Board 5's Landmarks Committee. It was an interesting discussion. I think one of the 2 points to address in particular, I think one of the interesting parts of the discussion was that they didn't recognize that there are existing canopies in the district and they were there as well historically. They felt like that was a feature that did not exist in the district. So we tried to clarify that for them, but we've supported that, I think, with information in this presentation. The other thing I think worth pointing out is that we revised the design following that committee meeting. The previous design was sort of much more simple in its detailing, and Alec and his team has integrated in the coffering detail and the recessed panels to sort of better relate to that 5-bay clear story that exists directly above. So I think both in terms of clarifying the presence of canopies historically in the district, and then also refining the details of our proposal, I think we've meant to sort of address their concerns and hopefully satisfy any that you might have as well.
Okay,
As well,
thank
Cass,
you.
we addressed the concern regarding the font on the signage, where we've now brought the font to be in line with the existing building signage.
Okay, thank you. Great. Any other final questions, commissioners? Okay, not seeing any hands raised. I'm gonna move toward closing this hearing. Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
I so motion.
And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that?
Second.
All right, all in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed, and I want to just note for the record that Commissioner Holford Smith is recused on this item. She's not been present for the entire presentation, and now we'll move to our discussion. So moving down, Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you like to start this discussion?
Sure. I think the proposal is very appropriate. The bronze finish, the kind of subtle modern meets sort of serif meets sans serif is well done. And I think this is absolutely appropriate.
All right, Commissioner Gustafson.
Agreed.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Agreed.
Okay, Commissioner Lutfi.
Totally agree.
Commissioner Bland.
Likewise, agree.
Okay, Commissioner Chen.
Same here.
And Commissioner Devonshire.
Appropriate.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Ditto.
And Commissioner Chapin.
Agree.
Okay, so I think we have a consensus to approve. I think as we've seen over the years, documentation that canopies did exist, particularly at some of these service entries historically, and the commission certainly has a record of approving them. And I think this one fits nicely within the opening, doesn't damage any historic fabric, and is nicely detailed to relate to the architecture of the building and the architecture within this bay. So Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you go ahead and make this motion and read the motion?
Sure. Yes. In the matter of LPC 2009059, 165th Avenue, Ladies Mile Historic District, a neo-Renaissance office, store, and loft building designed by Robert Henderson Robertson and built in 1891-92, the application is to install new entrance infill and a marquee. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Ladies Mile Historic District, and I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate any significant historic architectural features of the building, that the proposed modifications to the non-historic storefront infill, including retaining and modifying select storefront components and installing a new revolving door with 2 flanking doors, all finished in dark bronze to match the existing storefront, will be consistent with similar historic and modified storefronts at the building within the historic district. That the proposed marquee featuring dark bronze finished recessed metal panels with integrated lighting and stainless steel pin-mounted numbers will be anchored to the building at modern infill, will be well scaled to the entrance, and will be in keeping with the simple designs of modern marquees installed at buildings of a similar age and style found elsewhere in the historic district.
Okay, sorry. I thought the internet had broken up. Okay, Commissioner
No, there's
Gustafson.
there's also one more finding that needs
Okay.
to be, the work will not diminish.
Sorry, can't hear you.
All right, I think, did you miss the last finding on that, Commissioner Barron? And that the work will not diminish the special?
Of course. And that the work will not diminish the special architectural and historic character of the Ladies Mile Historic District.
Great. Commissioner Gustafson, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes, Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Mr. Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Okay, with 10 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, now we'll move to the next item.
And the next item is number 5, LPC 20-06947, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 554, Lot 1, 770 Broadway in the NoHo Historic District. A Renaissance Revival style department store building designed by D.H. Burnham and Company and built in 1903 to 07 with an addition built in 1924 to 25. The application is to install a rooftop HVAC unit.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing and will be taking on the presentation. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Hello, everyone. Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Thank you for, first of all, obviously, thank you everyone for having me today. And obviously just with the world the way that it is today, you know, again, appreciate. My name is Simon. I'm from Spectre Group here. I think maybe who's joining me is Kurt Rohner, who's also the from Goldman Copeland. We are here today to present the 770 Broadway project for the addition of the cooling tower at this present location. And let me see, hold on. Trying to see if I can get change. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to kind of go into the presentation. So this is just the front page cover. Before I start, I just wanted to kind of discuss why why the reason for this project. At this moment, we are adding these cooling towers that are located on the roof, and it's to increase the capacity of the building. As we go through some of these. Here are some of the historical photos of the site as it is today. We are not changing anything to the existing facade. We're not changing anything to the building structure at this moment. Currently houses such anchor tenants such as Facebook. And again, the purpose of this project is really to increase the cooling capacity of the building. The building is located on 770 Broadway, so it's on the corner of 80th and Broadway. Here's a plan of the existing layout on the roof. Currently, as it sits today, there's 5 existing cooling towers, as you can see on here. Now, our proposed plan is to add a 6th cooling tower that is going to mimic the approximate same size and just maybe vaguely smaller, and approximately the same square footage as it is today. So you can see that there's 5, and now there's a 6 on the Broadway side of the building. Here are proposed the elevations of the new tower. As you see on the bottom plan, we're locating the 6th unit on the left-hand side of the plan, of the elevation. Now on the top, there's an existing 5 units as of today. We're looking to reuse the existing steel that is there today. If you notice on the plan, we're not doing any modifications to the existing steel as it sits today. Now, we were asked to make a mock-up of this particular unit in its actual size. So on the left, what you see here is in orange is the 6 additional unit that we're adding. So there are 5 existing cooling towers as it is today. And on the right side, what you see here is a Photoshop rendering of what the unit will look like. It's going to keep the same look and aesthetic, but I get just with the new modifications, it is slightly smaller, maybe just about a foot or so in overall length. I'm sorry, in overall height. The steel, as I mentioned before, we're not modifying the steel. We've already coordinated with the structural engineer that has noted that its ability to hold the additional cooling tower is no issue at this point. So what we obviously with the mock-up, we wanted to also look at how this would impact the overall view of the neighborhood. So what we did was we started with photos of the existing space without the cooling tower, and it's before the mock-up was installed. So this is a view of the 8th Street side of the building. As you can see from this vantage point, you're not able to see the cooling tower as it is any view of it. And then as you walk further down 9th Street and Broadway, again, you're not able to see the cooling tower. Now 9th Street and Broadway, again, another view. But as you walk further away from the site, you'll be able to see 9th Street and Broadway University. You could see the back of the unit ever so slightly where it's highlighted in the red circle. Going down Broadway and 10th Broadway between 9th and 10th, you're not able to see the unit. But as you walk away towards 11th and Broadway, you're able to see the 5 existing units as it stands. It kind of blends in with the background. It doesn't appeal and have any presence unless you're looking for the structure itself. And then obviously we wanted to have views of what the impact of what adding this 6th unit would look like. So here's a few locations that we took these vantage points of the unit. As you can see, maybe on the 11th Street and Broadway side, the additional orange is the mock-up of the 6th unit. It's sitting next to the existing 5 units as it stands today, and would blend in ultimately. On the 9th Street side on Broadway, you see the side of the unit projecting out ever so slightly from the vantage point. On 9th and Broadway, you're not able to see the unit at all. 9th and 10th Street and Broadway, again, not able to see it again. Here, we took this side-by-side comparison to show you what it looks like with the mock-up, with the 6th unit. And then on the right side, it shows you the additional. So that's actually photo rendered showing the 6th unit if it were to be installed. And that's really all I have today, and open to any questions or comments at this point.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant at this point? All right, and not seeing any hands raised. Let's see if there's any public testimony. Lisa?
Nobody signed up to testify, and I think we only have one applicant in the waiting room.
Okay, thank you. Rich, do we have any written testimony or a resolution from the community board?
Yes, you have a resolution from community board 2 recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any final questions before we close the hearing and move into our discussion? Okay, and not seeing any. Let's go ahead and make a motion to close the hearing. And Commissioner Chapin, would you make that motion?
So moved.
And Commissioner Devonshire, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we're going to move into our discussion now. And this is really sort of just expanding an existing set of mechanical units on the roof. of this building that is taller than most of many of the surrounding buildings. And so there are some views largely seen against the backdrop of other rooftop features. So Commissioner Gustafson, would you like to start on this one?
Yeah, I think the additional unit is barely visible. It doesn't do any damage to the building, and it's very, very difficult to discern even from the viewpoints where you can see it. So I find it to be appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson.
I find it appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Lutfi.
I agree.
Commissioner Bland.
Agreed.
Commissioner Chen.
Same here.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Appropriate.
Okay, so I think we're heading in that direction. Is there anyone who disagrees? Please raise your hand if you have a different thought about this, commissioners. And I'll recognize you. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and make this motion. So Commissioner Gustafson, would you go ahead and read the motion?
In the matter of LPC 20-06947-770 Broadway in the NoHo Historic District, Renaissance Revival Style Department Store designed by D.H. Burnham and Company and built in 1903-07, with an addition built in 1924-25. The application is to install a rooftop HVAC unit. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the NoHo Historic District. I recommend approval, noting that the work will not eliminate any significant architectural features, that the HVAC unit will be installed on existing dunnage adjacent to an existing cooling tower and will not result in a significant increase in the bulk or visibility of these mechanical equipment installations, that the HVAC unit will only be visible from public thoroughfares at a distance in the context of other utilitarian rooftop accretions, and that the work will not diminish the special architectural and historic character of the building or the NoHo Historic District.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
I second.
Okay, Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 11 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. That's approved. And commissioners, we are a little ahead of schedule, so we're going to move up the one item that was scheduled for after lunch. It's 1162 Broadway, and then we'll break for lunch and then come back at the estimated time for the last two items of the day. So Corey, will you read the next item in?
Yes, it's item number 6, LPC 20-05494. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 829, Lot 28, 1162 Broadway in the Madison Square North Historic District. This is a vacant lot, and the application is to construct a new building.
Good afternoon.
And commissioners, the applicant has joined the hearing. And you have control of the screen, and you may state your name for the record and begin.
My name is Tom Lewis with Morris Adjmi Architects, and I'm here to talk about 1162 Broadway. Thank you all for your time. I'll try to be brief and go through this quickly, understanding you have a lot to do today. The building was previously approved. The design for the building was previously approved in 2013. Minor changes were made to the building design due to site conditions and a change of use in the project. And we were working with Landmark staff to keep the changes at staff level when the certificate of appropriateness expired. The presentation today is geared to show the minor revisions that were updated in the updated design. I'll also briefly describe the context of the approved design and the historic precedent imagery that was presented in the previous presentation to explain how that design relates to the district. The approved design, let me move on to the next page. Whoops. Okay, good. So the approved design was inspired by many of the tall, thin buildings. I've gone too far. In the district. There we go, sorry. The approved design was inspired by many of the tall, thin buildings in the Madison Square North Historic District, along with the greater Madison Square North region. The design, not uncommon for buildings in the area, uses masonry sidewalls with a projecting bay window, recalls the bay window expression in the district, along with the sidewall are sloped back and are working hard to maintain the street wall of the typical street wall of Broadway, along with sloping back as a nod to the way that Broadway itself cuts through the city grid of Manhattan. The changes that we are proposing from the original design that was approved in 2013 is that the roof height has been lowered by 2 feet. The number of floors has actually been reduced from 14 floors to 13 floors. There are minor changes in the window wall system based off the revised proportions. There's a Siamese connection at the ground floor that has been added. The primary reason for the changes was that when we changed from hotel use to a office use, the rear yard was no longer allowed to be at 30 feet. And so the rear yard has changed to 17 feet, which you'll see in both the elevation and some of the sections. And then I think one of the important changes that has taken place is that we were able to consolidate a lot of the mechanical equipment. So you'll see as I go through the presentation, but the building on the drawing on the left is what was presented in 2013. And the drawing on the right shows the elimination of a bulkhead and the consolidation of the elevator machine room and mechanical equipment so that we get a much cleaner view from the south. See if we can move to the next page. Okay, this is the current site. So top left is looking, there we go. Let's see if I can get back. Sorry for the page turning being slow. Well, this is the photographs of the building as it existed, 1940 on the left. Here we go. So this at bottom left is the existing condition as it exists today. Upper right-hand image is the district map, and then the bottom is the site plan from the Department of Buildings. Let's hope this goes smoothly. Okay. On the left is a photograph of the site in 1940. Again, and barely visible on the right here. It's kind of out of the photograph, but a photograph of the building in 1980, and then as pictured in 2001. So it's been a small 2-story building for quite some time and many different uses over the course of time. Let's see. Okay. These are views just of Broadway in the historic district. So this is the east side of Broadway between 25th and 26th Streets. And then this is the west side of Broadway between 27th and 28th Streets, again, showing just the general character. And here are some of those projecting bays. Okay, next page. Okay, this is the historic district map, the Madison Square North Historic District map. And this is just a drawing that's showing buildings over 5 stories and no more than 30 feet wide. So there are a lot of tall, thin buildings in the district itself when we proposed the design, and there still are. Next page. Okay, next page. These are photographs of some of those tall, thin buildings within the district, and then on the map, buildings number 3 through 7 are all actually within the district itself, and 1 and 2 are out of the district. Projecting bays, as I mentioned, projecting bays were an inspiration for the building, and so we've noted several projecting bays that are in either the district itself or the surrounding region. The next page is facade returns and sidewall transitions. So you'll see this detail showing up in our design as well, and the front facade wall wrapping around a little bit onto the sidewall so that it has some depth to it. Continuous sidewall, rooftop bulkhead. So we've worked to eliminate one of these, but we still have one of these on the north side of our building, but these were quite common where the sidewall projects up as a bulkhead to capture the elevator bulkheads or mechanical equipment. In our case, it's capturing primarily the elevator bulkhead and a little bit of mechanical equipment as well. Sorry for the slow turnovers on the pages. These are historical canopies and marquees. These are local historic precedents. So our building has a canopy on it. So we wanted to show that A, that had been done historically, and then B, we have more modern local existing precedents that are current and existing. Next page. So this is the design that was submitted and approved in 2013. I'm going to move on to the proposed designs. This is the current design, and I'll put them side by side in just a second. Let's go ahead and do that. And the streetscape. And then this is the current front elevation on the left, or excuse me, the approved elevation on the left and the proposed elevation on the right. I think, again, the biggest things are that the actual roof of the building was brought down by 2 feet. We lost a floor in the process of doing that, and so the proportions got a little bit better because the windows got a little bit taller. I think one of the other major improvements of the design that took place in these revisions is that on the previous design, we had a setback fence that covered all of the mechanical area, and it covered it on pretty much across the entire roof. In the current design, we're actually able to get all the mechanical and elevator equipment consolidated into the north side of the building. And so I have a diagram that will go through that a little bit better, but if you can just sort of side by side, most of this has been able to be pushed into here. And since the primary elevation of the building is from the south, we think it was a great improvement to overall design. So this is the rear elevation. Again, on the left is the previously approved design. On the right is showing that mechanical equipment being pushed to the north. The windows are ever so slightly taller due to the lack of the floor, and the roof level itself is 2 feet below the previous rooftop level. Side elevations, this is an elevation taken from the north. This is the previous bulkhead, and this is the new bulkhead showing the consolidation of some of that mechanical equipment. From the south on the next page. So this is the previously approved design, which had a large bulkhead that was pulled up here to capture the elevator machine room. That now has been pushed over to the north side. So this elevation is actually low. And then there are small mechanical equipment location behind that. Next page. This is an axonometric diagram that we did just to show what the current condition is, because I think it's sometimes hard to pick up in the elevation. So there used to be this bulkhead and mechanical equipment, excuse me, along this facade. All that has been consolidated into this facade, and you'll see in a second the views from the north are much more obstructed due to the fact that there are tall buildings on the north side of it. So it becomes much less apparent, and it's a much better view from the south where the views are quite open. Okay. So here is an enlarged elevation. This is the previously approved elevation from the front. This is just the rooftop at the front. This is actually the rooftop from the side. And then this upper drawing is all of the mechanical equipment having been pushed into that northern facade and up against that northern bulkhead. And so again, we get a much cleaner south side elevation of the building. Okay, so now we're going to jump into views. This is a view taken from Broadway from the south. So on the left, again, is the previously approved design. There's the bulkhead, and in this case, we've removed the bulkhead. And so the one consequence of that is that the water towers become much more visible, but I think the water towers are quite iconic in New York, and I think it's certainly an improvement to have be seeing the water towers as opposed to the mechanical equipment. View from the north coming up, there we go. So view from the north, this is the previous view from the north where you're getting a little bit of that mechanical equipment bulkhead. And then this is the view from the north in the proposed design. It's pushed back a little further, so it's a little bit less apparent. Next page. Okay. This is the view as taken from 27th Street from the south. As I mentioned before, the previous version of the building had a 30-foot setback. And due to the new use, the current version has a 17-foot setback. So that's one area where the building is a little bit more visible than it was before. Next page. Okay. Details of the front elevation on the left again was the previously approved design, and on the right is the proposed design. The differences between the two are minimal. Yeah. differences between the two. I mean, we did add a transom to add a little bit of detail at that ground floor, just to make it a little more approachable as well. And then we did a blow up elevation also of the cornice at the rooftop, just showing that height difference and the blow ups of the cornice itself. And finally, we did sections. This is a section taken at the marquee. And then this is a section taken at that cornice that I just showed you in elevation with our setback overrun mechanical equipment, which is only on the north side of the building. And that's all I have for you today.
Thank you very much. And we do have a question from Commissioner Goldblum. Go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about the change in the vertical pier profile at all the windows and at the corners, which changes the aesthetics of the facade noticeably?
Sure. You're talking about, sorry, this.
The pier goes from 7 inches to a foot, and the corner pier got a lot wider.
Yeah, that's one of the, as we dug into, because we actually, before the use was changed in this building, we had actually moved into design development and even into early CDs. And so we started to actually get a little bit more project information or curtain wall information. And that's a result of getting more factual information about the actual profiles that were going to be used in there. There is actually structure in that corner. And so it became difficult for us to maintain that thin profile. Yeah. And so that's what happened.
And so what is the dimension of the piers at the corner?
I believe the piers are now 12 by 12 back in that corner.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Gustafson.
Yeah, they're on the south side, the south facade there. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the lot line windows.
Okay.
They appear on a bunch of different pages, and the one we're looking at right now, for example, it looks like they were somewhat more pronounced on the left than the old version, and there's something different about them on the right. And then some of them, it looks like they're gone, and I can't, there are like 6 different pages, and I don't know what's going on with them. Are they changing at all?
They're not changing, no. No, I think that may be a rendering issue, but they're not changing. They're exactly the same as they were previously presented.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, other questions? Okay, not seeing any other questions. Let's see if there's public testimony. Lisa?
Yes, we did have one person sign up, Kelly Carroll, to speak. Hi, Kelly.
Historic Districts Council. HDC would like to state for the record that we supported the design of the new building when it was first heard in 2013, finding, quote, its fine materials and design nicely blends into the context of the Madison Square North Historic District while subtly expressing its modernity. The proposed design changes to this new building are appropriate, but the rooftop mechanical plan needs revisions. As proposed, the water tanks read as prominent bulk atop this building and should be lowered. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kelly. And then I see also John Walter in the waiting room. John Walter, can you hear me? John Walter, can you hear me? Okay, last time, John Walter, can you hear me? We brought you into our room. Okay.
Looks like he's connecting to audio.
Yeah. Okay. Not seeing that he's able to connect.
No, it doesn't seem to
John,
be.
yeah, John, I'm sorry. I think we're gonna put you back in the waiting room. Apologize for that. And with that, I think that's it.
Okay, Rich, do we have any written testimony?
Yes, we have a resolution from Community Board 5 recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Lewis, would you like to respond to the comment we heard about the mechanical equipment? Or any other final comments before we move to our discussion?
Sure. I think the one difference with the mechanical equipment was the previous version of the design did not have, it had the water towers on curbs. And I think as we dug into our Department of Building filings, the requirements called for it to be put on dunnage so that it can be serviced from the underneath. The building was lowered by 2 feet, and then it was put up, the water towers were put up on dunnage that was 6 feet tall. So they did actually grow a height of 4 feet. That is, they are sitting on top of the elevator machine room at this point. So we could look at locating them somewhere else, but I think that that's sort of the height that they need to be at, having gone through the research to get the building approved. I also just feel that water towers are somewhat of an iconic New York thing. So I'm not sure that's probably not worth that much. So.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions, commissioners? Okay, so not seeing any final questions, I think we'll move to our discussion. All right, Commissioner Holford Smith, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we're going to move into our discussion. And so this was, as the applicant stated, this was a commission-approved building. The commission found it appropriate in its height and massing, finding that it was in keeping with the variety of building heights in this particular historic district, and also found that the general composition was in keeping with the store and loft buildings in the district, and that the canted side allowed the front of the building to read as a projecting bay that is often seen in the sort of more masonry framed buildings in this historic district, and sort of a contemporary evocation of that. So the proposal today, that approval expired. So the proposal today is to renew that approval, but with some modifications that have been described by the applicant, including lowering the height of the building, which resulted also in some changes to the fenestration and the changes to the mechanical equipment. So why don't I just move down the list and start with Commissioner Jefferson. Would you like to start on the discussion on this? And maybe Edith, can we go back to the slide that has the rendering of what was previously approved and the new rendering?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Jefferson.
It's a very handsome building. I do think that the bulkhead, removing the bulkhead, has changed the proportion of it somewhat. And I agree with the argument that the water towers are synonymous with these type of buildings, but the bulkhead added so much to the original building that I wish it would remain.
Okay, Commissioner Lutfi.
The building hasn't changed that much. However, I think the changes have improved the design, you know, lowering the floors and actually changing the windows somewhat. I think that it looks better at the street level as well in terms of you know, the articulation down there. I think the roof mechanicals, even though they're visible, they're dramatically cleaned up. And I agree that, you know, as we found before, you know, these kinds of slim, almost sliver buildings are characteristic and fit well in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bland.
Yes, building has changed almost not at all, except for the top. I rather like the top now. I like seeing the water towers. They are iconic, as the applicant spoke about. I want to just quickly remind the commission, tell the commission, way back when I was not a commissioner, but an applicant often to this commission, I designed 2 buildings on Houston Street, and then amongst a whole bunch of buildings in Soho that had water towers on them. We didn't need water towers because of water pumps and so forth. But nonetheless, the commission wanted me to add water towers to the building. So those water towers are still there and still functionless, to prove the point of the love affair of water towers. So I don't at all mind seeing them. And I think this is a handsome building, which I hope gets built now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen.
I agree with Commissioner Bland's comments.
Commissioner Devonshire.
I think it's approvable.
Commissioner Goldblum.
I agree. I think that the proportion changes are good. I don't think that the bulkhead needs to come back. I'm okay with it as is. I think the water tower's visibility is fine. I personally think that the biggest change for me is the change to the corner mullion, which kind of diminishes the bay window reading of the lower half of the building, whereas before it had the three-dimensionality of the projected portion was kind of created by the fact that the windows turned the corner. That now occurs on about half the building, but I still think that I think that it's not as good as its predecessor in that one regard. But I don't think that it is inappropriate. I think it'll be a good building, good addition to the district.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Chapin.
I think that the changes generally, particularly the change to the rooftop and some of the proportional changes work well. And also the addition of the transom onto the storefront, I think makes it at a street level. I think that's it's a better, it presents better. So I can approve this.
Okay, Commissioner Holford Smith.
I think the changes that they've made have been an improvement to the building, and I have no objection to seeing the water tanks on the roof.
Okay. Commissioner Shamir Baran.
I think I agree with Goldblum's point about the ways in which it sort of reads less as a single kind of bay because of these changes. But I also think that the new proportions of the windows add to the and reinforce the kind of the narrow and the thinness of the building. So I think that that's good, and I think generally it's approvable.
Okay, and Commissioner Gustafson.
I think it's appropriate.
Okay, all right. So I think we have a consensus to approve. So I'm going to ask Commissioner Lutfi if you would read that motion.
Sure. In the matter of docket 20-05494, 1162 Broadway, Madison Square North Historic District, a vacant lot, the application is to construct a new building. I note that the Madison Square North Historic District contains a rich and varied collection of brownstone residences, large apartment buildings, hotels, and high-rise office and loft structures, that the buildings were built in a variety of styles, including Queen Anne, Renaissance Revival, Moorish Revival, Classical Revival, Beaux-Arts, Neo-Gothic, and Art Deco. And they feature a variety of masonry cladding materials, including brownstone, limestone, terracotta, and a variety of brick. I further note that the commission approved a building of a similar design under the Certificate of Appropriateness 16-1709, which expired in December 2019. I recommend approval, finding that the height and massing of the proposed new building will fit within the variations of height and massing of buildings representing the different phases of development on this block and in this historic district, that the floor to ceiling heights will be proportional to those found on the adjacent buildings and will support a relationship between the new building and its neighbors, that the proportions of this tall and narrow facade are typical of many commercial buildings in this historic district, that the facade, composed of a dark painted metal bay and framed by light colored brick, is consistent with the materials and composition of historic loft and commercial buildings in this historic district, that the tripartite arrangement of the facade with a base, shaft, and crown reflects a typical arrangement of facades within the historic district, that the canting back of the masonry sidewalls is a contemporary device that creates the suggestion of a projecting bay at the front facade, a distinctive feature of many early 20th century buildings in the district, that the large window at the lobby and the single pane doors and side lights at the entrances relates harmoniously to other storefronts and building entrances in the streetscape, that the presence of a canopy at the entrance will be in keeping with the commercial character of this historic district, and that for all these reasons, the proposed new building will complement and enhance the special architectural and historic character of the streetscape and the Madison Square North Historic District.
Thank you. Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Nay.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 10 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, that's approved. Thank you. So we'll now take a break for lunch and we will return at 1:15. And for the public, if you want to follow the live stream, what you'll need to do is go to our main channel on YouTube and restart the video to ensure that you're in the live stream and not looking at the earlier session. So we'll break now for lunch and we'll be back at 1:15. And everybody, please turn off your video and your sound. Thank you.